You're listening to the Survivor Sweat Podcast with Mike Buchmiller and Russell Rosenblum. If you're looking for strategy articles and just about everything Survivor, head to survivorsweat.com. Now, let's get to it.
Welcome, everybody. Survivor Sweat Pod number 12. Week 12, we are heading into. My name is Mike Buchmiller, my partner in crime, Russell Rosenblum. We were last year's Jed entry, for those of you that are just popping on for the first time, but Jed is dead. And for the second straight week, the Chalkers are dead too.
We were a little ahead of our time as usual, but as they say in trading, early is wrong.
I've been thinking about that quite a bit. Is what
it is.
Yeah.
At least we're giving the other people good advice, telling them to avoid the teams that are now. And it's not just that they lose. It's again, we state the same thing again and again and again and again. It's that when they lose, you pick up a lot of extra equity.
That's correct.
That's really the issue here.
We were ahead of our time on the Chalk, and we were ahead of our time on the Denver Broncos, who now incredible team for crying out.
I haven't gone back to look because it would just be depressing, but I think over 2 or 3 weeks, it might have cost us half of our total entries for the whole season or something like that.
No question. They have been the thorn in our side all year. Baltimore's kind of played some games with us as well. They were a little shaky early on and then got hot. And then
they're another one that I think we lost 2 straight weeks. I think we had like all their losses or weeks we had, something like that.
Well, now the real excitement begins because it's Thanksgiving week, one of those special in the Circus Survivor contest where you have to select a game on Turkey Day, and in this year also on Friday. And I'm going to get around to some info as to when everybody needs to get their picks in, even regarding the Friday contest. But I remember last year, Russ, at this time, we were feeling pretty confident heading into Turkey Day. We had Buffalo. Now, we also knew that they would most likely be the Chalk, but we had
chalk.
Yeah,
we like beyond chalk. Yeah.
And little did we know that was going to be the start of Detroit's second half run. And they gave us all the Survivor sweat we needed.
Yeah. I thought it was over at points in that game.
Yeah. It's real tough being all chummy with your family on Thanksgiving when you're pacing around with the game in the background. And you have your life on the line, if you will, for the Survivor contest. And man, what a run it was. But we were fortunate enough to pull out that game, obviously. And but when I mentioned that, like the Chalk, everybody was on it. I think we were down to 73 entries.
Sounds right.
Yeah, give or take an entry or two. But I mean, you could almost smell the finish line, see the finish line. I mean, you're not there yet, but if you can get past that Thanksgiving week, we felt like we had some teams lined up. We had multiple teams in different spots lined up that we can maneuver, and we felt like maybe we could have a sick run, or at least put ourselves in a position to have a sick run. And as it turns out, some things definitely went our way for sure.
We did have a sick run, and that was one of many games we had to win.
Yeah, well, yeah,
that were close. I mean, we had to win all the games, but I mean, one of many games that we had to win with like crazy sweats at the end.
Yeah, of course. And we were down to 1 entry. So, it wasn't like you're in here with some of these guys with 10. We had the single digit entry, a chip in a chair, and a dream. And fortunately, we ran through it. So, yay.
Yep.
This year, not so much. I can be a little bit more friendly with my family. I don't have to.
Do you have to be, or just you're able to?
Fantasy implications, of course. There's always something, man.
There's always something. There'll be fantasy. There'll be pick'em. There'll be something.
Oh yeah, no, of course, absolutely. Well, last week was fun. We had the co-defending champion on, Alex Brown. I got a lot of feedback that they enjoyed when we brought somebody on the pod, and we'd like to do that again in the future. So if you are a defending champ, or even if you're somebody still in, if you're one of these guys that have all 10 entries, man, I'd love to have you pick your brain. Maybe you don't want to give away your secret sauce, but it's just fun to talk contests. So if one of you are out there that would like to chat it up, we would.
Or even if you're one of the people that had, 10 entries and you busted all on one team.
Yes.
That's because now you don't have to worry about giving up so much strategy anymore, at least your future picks. And it's still pretty interesting for everybody out there to know what you're thinking.
No, absolutely. Well, Alex discussed last week that he thought at least one of his entries was going to be on the Commanders, or one was, because he had them available. And of course, he got snipped. So he had the Commanders and Jacksonville. So he's still alive.
Yep.
He's got one chip in a chair now. He's the one defending champ for the improbable repeat. So we are rooting for him. But yeah, he is now down to one bullet. And we'll have to see where he goes this week. Kind of have an idea, but we'll wait and disclose that once the picks come out. Let's go ahead and recap that week 11. 237 hit the skids, 38.9% go down. So there are 372 entries remaining out of the original 9,267. So 95.99% of the entire pool has been eliminated through week 1. And for the first week, there were no picks. So everybody got the picks in. They must be listening to the pod, Russ.
Must be it. Maybe they all got proxies.
Yeah, it's getting a little important now. So when you click that button, let's make sure it says submit. Let's double, triple check it. And for sure, like I said, if you need some insurance, you know where to find it. Footballproxy.com, survivorsweat.com. If you want to buy some insurance for it, have somebody as a backup brain if you want. Get those picks in early and then have the ability to change it, as Russ has mentioned on several occasions. Because when you push that button on the Circa app, you can't change your pick. It is in.
That's right.
Done.
That's right. And if I remember right, over at Survivor Sweat, I assume it's still there. I haven't looked in a bit because I haven't needed to in a bit, but they, had brief reviews of a number of proxy services up there.
Yep.
So you can go take a look at pros and cons and see there's more than one and, kind of make a decision. You don't have to feel locked into something. There are a number of them out there. Some are better than others, but you can go figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great advice. Well, last week, I checked out Survivor Atlas leaderboard. Two individuals entered with 10 entries each. One of them laid the wood, all 10, with the Jacksonville Jaguars and had zero sweat. They were pretty much in control of that game from the start. The others sprinkled around with a combination of the 49ers, Texans, Jags, and Detroit. So only one went all teams, all 10. And there are only 41 people that have more than one entry left in the contest. So it's a little rough out there for sure. It is a little rough. And so
kind of how it goes.
Yep. Commanders go down 38 point some odd percent. I think it's like 38.5% of the pool goes down. A couple goes down with the Chargers. So as we mentioned on the Survivor Sweat X handle, we thought that the two heavy favorites, Commanders and Jaguars, with the Commanders having their beak out in front, upwards to 40%. They didn't quite get there, but they got close. And again, as we mentioned time and time again, if you were on this pod last week or listening to the pod, we were going to fade the Commanders. We were looking at spots such as Detroit and Houston.
Yep.
They both got through.
And Dallas, if you still had them. I know we had this
Dallas,
discussion because we had suggested possibly using Dallas the week before. We're trying to not be disingenuous here, and tell you every week, like, take San Francisco if you still have them, right? I mean, if we told you to use a team, we're trying to avoid telling you to use the next week as well.
Yeah, we would have had Detroit and Houston in this spot because we didn't play them. And we're not far out of the tournament, but we would have had them. And but
saving Miami for we can save that for when we discuss it, but it's pretty obvious.
No, you're
already used
right.
Detroit
exactly
and Dallas.
What we put on the Twitter handle was because Dallas became a play because of the lack of ownership that we now see on Thanksgiving, and the fact that now the chalk is most likely high probability will be Detroit. So that's why Dallas then slipped in there. Dallas also has some pretty good opportunities in the future weeks. So they have some really good future values could have pushed the button there, or you could have tried to go with Detroit or Houston. And we personally, as we'll mention moving forward, we're kind of locked in on Miami because of the low percentages.
Sure.
So,
and we would have been locked in anyway, even if, you got to remember when you look at percentages, there's always a chance that can change based on who gets knocked out, right? So you could have somebody, you could be looking up and say 15% have Miami left, but suddenly all the people that get knocked out all had, Dallas or something.
Yeah.
So the same number of people may have Miami left, but suddenly that may represent, 5% of the field, or it may represent 40% of the field.
Mm-hmm.
You're still just going with the best information you have at the time.
No, absolutely, without a doubt. No, that's pretty much the wrap on week 11. The exciting week, as we mentioned, is coming up. So we want to tee that up for you. So let's take a quick break and we'll jump into
move forward.
Yes, sir.
Time for a message from our sponsor. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Survivor Sweat Podcast.
If you live out of state but want to enter any of the biggest football handicapping contests in Las Vegas, you've come to the right place. Football Proxy is the most professional proxy service in Las Vegas and can serve as your trusted proxy to enter your picks each week for the Super Contest, Circa Sports Millions, or Circa Survivor contests. What makes Football Proxy different from other proxies? Well, like other proxies, we have late selection deadlines and an easy-to-use web portal to submit your picks each week. But, unlike other proxies, we allow our customers to change their picks anytime before the pick deadline, which is crucial when gathering last-minute information. Ask another proxy if they allow you to make changes to your picks and see their reaction. It's what makes us the top-rated proxy service in Las Vegas. To get started, fill out the contact form and a representative will contact you to answer any questions and schedule an appointment. Then book your trip to Las Vegas and meet us at the designated casino to get signed up. Once the season starts, sweat the action all season long with your picks. Schedule an appointment today and compete against the world's best for your chance at millions.
Okay, we are back for week 12. Let's tee this thing up for you. Before we can get into Sunday plays, you got to make it to Sunday. So here are the Thanksgiving plays. You got your Detroit Lions at -7.5, your Dallas over the Packers, of course, your Dallas Cowboys -11 over the Commanders, the 49ers -7 at the Seattle Seahawks, and you got that sneaky Friday play, the Dolphins minus, I think they're up to -10 now for Friday's game at the Jets. What's your thoughts on this here?
Well, first, it's pretty obvious from what you said, but Friday counts as Thanksgiving. That's why you're bringing it up now, just to be clear. Circa being somewhat generous. They're giving you a fourth game to choose from. You won't get that on Christmas. I think it's just 3. So you got 4 games to choose from. What's really interesting, I say generous. I don't think they really planned this out when they put the schedule together. Those are actually, those 4 teams, the favorites, Dallas, Detroit, Miami, San Francisco, are 4 of the top 5 overall picks for the whole weekend.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So now you're in a spot where, to be clear, and I assume people realize this, but just in case you don't, it's not that you just have to take at least 1 game on Thanksgiving. You must take exactly 1 game on Thanksgiving. You still got to take 1 on Sunday. So you can't turn around and take Miami and then like Dallas for your Sunday game. Dallas is still a Thursday game, right? So you got to keep that in mind, which means if you don't have Kansas City left, you're moving down the list of some pretty sketchy games for Sunday. And it's just unfortunate. I know we talked about this months ago. So what are my thoughts here? The percentages drop pretty precipitously. What is it that's left in Miami right now? Do you recall?
So 9% of the contest entries have the ability to take Miami left.
And what is Detroit, like 40 something?
Detroit is 56%.
56%, right? So when you said it's very likely Detroit is the chalk, it's more than likely. You're going to have probably 56%. There were a few entries, I can't recall how many, that had both.
Yeah.
I saw it over at Atlas a couple days ago that had at least 2 of these teams.
Yes.
Right. So maybe for some of them they take the other team, but it's somewhat immaterial. You're going to have within 2 or 3 points exactly whatever these percentages are. It's going to be that. That's going to like if you add up the 3 numbers, what is it up to 105% or something?
Yeah, let's break down the percentages. So 56, as I had mentioned, with the Lions,
Yep.
24% with the Cowboys, 11% with the 49ers, and then again 9%. So
what was the 9%? Oh, just the rep.
No, 9% the Dolphins.
Oh, the Dolphins, right. So we had a few people that I think there were 16 entries or something like that didn't have any of the favorites.
16 entries do not have.
And I'm going to give an opinion on that in a minute, be a little controversial. But somebody asked me about that. That was one of our questions. So I'll save a little bit of what do you do when you don't have any of these favorites today? And I'll give an opinion, flip a coin. No, there is an actual opinion here. So looking at this again, if I were looking at the popularity, again, not taking Circa into account, because most of the numbers that are out there don't take Circa into account, you'd be looking at things like Minnesota at 29% and Tennessee at 20, Kansas City at 15, and then the big drop off to the single digits with Detroit, Dallas, Miami, kind of filling it all out there. And a lot of it is because they're gone already. The reality here is that you could make if you had Miami and Dallas, I guess you could make an argument for taking Dallas. I would just take Miami and be done with it. I mean, you really should just be taking the team that's not owned as much. In this case, it's clearly Miami. So the reality is you're really looking at very few people have more than one left. So, whatever advice we're giving is kind of meaningless. I could tell you take Miami. If the only one you have left is Detroit, take Detroit, right? But in order, if you have a choice, you take Miami, then you take Dallas, then you take Detroit. And then I guess you take San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
That would be your.
There's
your
also one other play here that we're not discussing, and it just depends on what type of player you are and what type of bankroll you have.
The no pick, the giving up.
No, you have the opportunity if you take the Dolphins. You have the advantage of knowing what happened prior to your game. So if the improbable thing happened and the Packers show up and the Commanders somehow clip the Cowboys, you could be walking into Friday's contest with less than 50 people in the pool.
Let me be clear as you say that, because you said you were going to address deadlines, because I'm pretty sure I know what you mean.
Yes.
You'll already have your pick in prior to this. Not that it would matter because there'd only be one game left.
Really. That's 100%. And let me address that right now. So the deadline for all your picks, whether they are on Thanksgiving or Friday, Miami's game, the deadline is today at 10 p.m. And as we're doing this pod, this is Wednesday, it is due today. So you cannot, if you plan to take Miami, you can't wake up Friday morning and take them. You
can't wake up tomorrow morning and take them.
That is correct. You have to push the button tonight. So if you are going to take the Dolphins, you have to play them today. You have to enter your pick today.
And now back to Mike's point. And this gets a little more complicated, but let's assume only exactly, what do we say, 9% or whatever had Miami left? Sorry, something like that. Let's assume every other favorite loses. And only 6% of the field had Miami just because somebody had Miami and somebody else. And so now if Miami wins, you're going to be down to 20-ish players. Yeah. Right? Something like that. Okay. So what does that mean? I mean, it means it's great. It's all good news, right? One thing it does mean, if you already have Miami for Friday, you can go ahead and make a money bet on the Jets as a hedge. Now, keep in mind, once you start to hedge, you have to keep doing it, or you risk losing that money that you spent hedging.
No, it's better than that. Well, no, it's not, because somebody might take two sides of a team here. So I was thinking, well, maybe they lose, everybody splits the pool. But there will be people that take two sides of a game.
Well, it's not even that they're going to take two sides. We already know someone's going to take an underdog, because there are people that don't have the favorite available.
No, you're right. You're right.
So they really have no choice. Which comes full circle to the question I was asked. And by the way, if I were to hedge at this stage, it's very, very early. If I were to hedge here, I probably wouldn't personally at that stage. I would probably hedge a very small amount just to make sure that, I don't lose money on Survivor. Maybe I put up, $500 getting 4-1. I'm going to get back, basically $2,000 if the Jets win, something like that. And if they lose, I'm now into Survivor for $1,500 on that entry, right? But I think that's okay. And then you can evaluate if you want to keep hedging or not. But let me put that aside for a minute, because this comes full circle to the question you asked. The question that was asked. I know I'm skipping ahead a bit. Usually we do the questions later, but it involves Thanksgiving. What do I do if I don't have any favorites left? Well, okay, you take a dog, obviously. Which dog? Let's assume you have them all left. if I were to look at strictly the EV based on where they project teams coming out, technically speaking, you're probably supposed to take Seattle. But I mean, these are all really, really close between Seattle, Green Bay, the Jets. They're all close. Interestingly, I think this is an interesting spot. I probably say take Green Bay. And the reason for that is that with so many people, with more than half the field ending up on Detroit, if Detroit wins, you knock out half the field and you're still alive.
Yeah.
Right. If you pick some other, because if Detroit wins, sorry, if Detroit loses, obviously, to be clear, Detroit loses, Green Bay wins. To be clear, if Detroit loses, by definition, it's 100% Green Bay won. Right. I mean, it's not like you don't have to do very complicated math.
Well, there's the tie.
But then Detroit didn't lose. They got knocked out, but they didn't lose.
Yeah.
Right. So it's 100% Green Bay wins if Detroit loses. Right. Whereas if you go and take, say, the Jets, well, sure, maybe Detroit wins and the Jets win. And so you've only picked up 9% equity in the pool for all this massive risk you're taking a crappy team that's, a 4-1 underdog, right? Like it's just a disaster. So you would now need two things to happen, really, to pick up 50% of the pool. You need Detroit to lose and the Jets to win.
Yeah.
Right. That's harder than just Detroit losing. Like I'm saying this for all the non-math people out there. I'm not going through the math. It doesn't really matter. It's a lot harder for two things to happen than just one thing to happen, particularly when one of those two is exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
In both instances, you kind of need Detroit to lose to order to make any headway. So I would actually just go ahead and take Green Bay in that spot. Because also, let's say you took the Jets and it so happened all the other favorites lost, and we talked about the whole hedging thing. The reality is you don't really have a good hedge on Friday anyway, because we're going to do bet Miami for $3,000 laying 3-1 or $4,000 laying 4-1 to try to get back your 1,000. When you hedge, you want to be betting the dog.
Yeah, no,
right, and getting value. So there's really not a lot of value in trying to hedge there. So if you have all three dogs available, you're basically taking them in the exact opposite order. Or if you think about it, if I'm saying take Miami first, then take Dallas, then take Detroit. If you have the underdog, you want to take the team that's playing Detroit first, which is Green Bay.
Yeah.
Then you want to take the team that's playing Dallas second, which is Washington. And then third, you want to take the team that's playing Miami, which is the Jets. So pretty straightforward. There you go. You got all 6 permutations for Thanksgiving. And that should cover all your possible outcomes for whatever you're looking at.
There was one other, somebody had reached out to me. They have 2 dogs and a favorite. So they were asking, should they take both sides of a game and then one dog? So in this case, you take both sides, whatever side that they are.
I don't think so. I'd have to really look very closely at the math, but my suspicion is the time you want to do that is if you told me 85% of the field had Dallas, which was pretty close to Buffalo last year. I don't remember the numbers, but it was massive on Buffalo. Because this year on Thanksgiving, there are three reasonable games. And actually right now, San Francisco, Seattle's reasonable too. So there's really 4 reasonable favorites to take. Last year, we knew week 1, there was 1 game worth, and the second one was marginal at best. The third one was terrible, and there was no Friday game. So I think if you had 80%, 90% of people on a team, I think there'd be value in taking 2 sides of a game. And then you'd have to decide, well, there'd be value in taking one favorite, one dog. Would I be taking 2 sides of the same game, or would I be taking a favorite and a different dog? That's going to depend on what percentage of people are on the same game. Sorry. So to directly address your question, if you said he had, I'm assuming you meant he had 1 entry and he had a favorite and 2 dogs. If he had 3 entries, well, then whatever. You're treating them each separately.
You had 3 entries.
Oh, well, you're going to take your one favorite. And then the question is, are you taking the dog on against the team that you already, it probably depends which team.
To guarantee that you will survive till.
It probably depends which team. Yeah. If you told me I have, because he has 3 dogs, he has almost all of them. I don't know which one he doesn't have, probably Seattle. If you tell me, the favorite you're taking is like San Francisco, you don't have enough of the field on that team to make it worth taking the other side of that game, in my opinion. It's again, you still need too many things to happen for this to be worthwhile, right? So I probably still take San Francisco. Like if that's your only favorite, you're going to take San Francisco, and then you're going to take like Washington. for all the same reasons.
I could see a path or scenario where if their favorite was the Lions, they took the Lions, then they took the Packers, and then they took the Commanders.
And that was going to be the next thing. If the only favorite he has left is Detroit, there might be value in taking the other side of the same game, because for that entry, you're going to pick up so much equity when Detroit loses.
That's correct.
But again, if it's San Francisco, I wouldn't take San Francisco and Seattle. I wouldn't take Miami I definitely wouldn't take Miami and the Jets. I think that would be, you're not picking enough. When the Jets win, yes, you advance, but you're picking up 10% equity on the pool for that one underdog. It's just not worth it. At least the other underdog, you're going to pick up roughly 50% equity in the pool. There's some value there.
Yeah. And then the one variable here is that the Niners are a save team for Christmas.
Correct.
Now, of course, you need to get there, but that does have that value next to that team for sure. And so, as you'd mentioned before, the absolute moving forward. So you get through Thanksgiving, and now you have to make another play on Sunday, and you're looking down at the list of games. I'm just staring at them going, what the heck? I mean, the biggest favorite is the Chiefs, -9 at the Raiders, but they are also that Christmas play. So you have the Niners.
Yeah, there are big issues here.
Yeah, big issues. And then
and by the way, for the record, only roughly 12% of the field still has San Francisco left.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's tough. I mean, the only way I'm using San Francisco here, and I would use them here, is if I didn't have any of their favorites. I'm not going to use a dog instead of San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'll wait and figure out Christmas later. I'd rather wait and finish it. Let's say by using San Francisco here, I don't have a favorite on Christmas either. I'd still rather do that. I mean, it's incredibly unlikely the pool's over before then, but it's not zero.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use an underdog now. I'd rather wait and use the underdog later.
Sure. So after the Chiefs, so let's say you're not using the Chiefs or you're holding back the Chiefs. And by the way, the Chiefs can't score in the second half now. 3 straight games that they can't score. When I saw that tweet come out, I was just floored by it. I almost couldn't believe it. They're averaging 5.5 points in the second half for the entire year.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, with Andy Reid and his adjustments. And man, it just interesting stuff. And now, the Raiders lose last week to the Dolphins, but man, they're playing so much better on defense, and they're going to be game. They're going to be game here. They're playing for that coach.
They're a team inspired. I mean, look, they won 2 straight games. Now, granted, they were the Giants and the Jets. So, I mean, but they still won, and they're a team in disarray. They won. They went to Miami in a game they're not supposed to win at all, and they lost by a score, right? So they're definitely fired up and competitive. We'll have to see what happens going forward, here with Kansas City. The Raiders are in a rough spot just in terms of once they got through those 2 games, having to then play Miami and then Kansas City, not ideal. Then at least they'll get a bye. They'll play Minnesota at home. And then they've got, the Chargers. They got Kansas City again in Kansas City. And they got Indy and Denver. Right now, they're dogs in every game. But I'm not sure they'll end up being dogs in every game if they keep playing like this. We'll see.
So let's take the Chiefs out of the equation for the future Sunday plays. What are we taking? You got the Vikings -3.5 versus the Bears. And by the way, they may carry the highest ownership now.
Yeah, let me go backwards here for a second. And just very basically here, you got to look down at what you have for Christmas remaining before you make your decision on Kansas City, right? So do you still have San Francisco and you're saving San Francisco? Like you're not using them this week because you've got Miami or something, right? Then I think go ahead and use Kansas City. I mean, I understand the Raiders are playing inspired football, etc. And I understand Kansas City will have a pretty decent number of the field on them because everybody that's dodging, once you get through Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But there's only 25% of the field that even have Kansas City left. Yeah. Like preliminary estimates are that roughly 15% of the non-circa field would be on Kansas City.
Yeah.
You could plausibly have 20% on Kansas City here, but it is what it is. Yeah. You don't really have a lot of options here. The next one's down the list. And man, in terms of like for equity, and this it's really just cringeworthy. It's New England and then Tennessee. So, I mean, I don't know. Are those teams different? I guess they're technically different teams.
New England has not discussed, they have yet to disclose who's going to quarterback for them.
It's a difference.
It might not matter.
What's the difference? Right. I mean, they're bad. It's like the Jets. Does it really matter who's quarterbacking for the Jets? Does it really make a difference to you?
Tim Boyle.
But would it matter if they hadn't announced it? Would it matter if you weren't sure?
No.
Right. It makes no difference.
Yeah. And, all of a sudden the Giants woke up, and so, I mean, you're not warm and fuzzy taking the Pats -3 or the Pats at the Giants. I mean, what's going on?
But here's the problem you're going to run into. Tennessee is going to be the chalk.
Yeah.
100% of the field has Tennessee available. So when I said 20% may still be on Kansas City, I should backpedal that. It's probably going to be significantly lower, knowing Christmas and knowing that Carolina's terrible. By the way, Tennessee's terrible too. Now I know someone, that is a pretty big Titans fan, and he would still tell you they're terrible. And he's about to tell you because he's sitting right here. There's your Titans fan. They're terrible. I mean, I don't know. What do I do for Survivor? Am I taking Tennessee or New England? I honestly would. If I had another game available for Christmas, I just take Kansas City here.
Yeah.
I burn them right here because it's not unreasonable. The Giants and Carolina could both win their games.
Also don't forget the Eagles are also a Christmas play. So if you somehow still have the Eagles, that's a possibility. So if you're walking in this week and you have the Niners, the Eagles, and the Chiefs still available, I mean, you got so much EV left on the field here. I mean, this is
right.
This is nuts.
But I would go ahead and use Kansas City then. I'm not going to sit there and hold, but even if I only had two of those teams with one of them being Kansas City, like if I had Kansas City and Philly, I'm just using Kansas City now. I'm certainly not using Philly now. I'm not going to try to use Philly versus Buffalo. Buffalo's look bad, but I'd still rather take Kansas City on the road versus Las Vegas than I would Philly at home versus Buffalo.
I'm wondering if some of these players here that have 8 entries left, 6 entries left, 10 entries left, is this where they start sprinkling and they playing multiple sides of a game just to get through this week, and willing to give up an entry just to survive? Obviously, this is the meta game. This is where they start deploying their strategy.
Without really thinking about it too deeply, just off the top of my head, if I had 10 entries here and I had, more or less my choice, right? I probably go 4-4-1-1. Like I probably go 4 in Miami, 4 on Dallas, 1 on Washington, 1 on the Jets. Mm-hmm. That would be how I'd approach it here. And I haven't run the numbers on it. That might be insane. Like I really haven't, just as you mentioned it right now, and we hadn't talked about it. I do that because if you get the major upset, you have 2 entries left, which stink. It's 20% of your, you've lost 80% of your entries. That said, the field will have probably lost more than 80% of the field. So you'll have kept up with the field and you'll be alive, right? Yeah. So I think that would be an interesting strategy. We'll see what it is they choose to do. I wouldn't put 5 in Miami and 5 in the Jets. I think that'd be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out for sure.
But if you've been, I would bet you right now, man, it's possible someone lays the wood on Miami. Maybe. I don't think anybody that has 10 entries, if you've been holding 10, and be more clear, if you've been holding 10, consistently laying the wood, not having gotten here with a random path and you just happen to still have 10. I don't know if anybody's like that. I think this is why you've held 10, taking the same team. It's for Thanksgiving and then maybe for Christmas, but it's not. I mean, so I would assume they're going to split their picks up this week. I wouldn't think anybody lays the wood on anybody unless maybe it's Miami. Just because so few teams have them, the entries have them, but I still don't think they'll do it. So this is interesting because, and I know we've said this indirectly, but bluntly, every year Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day are the hardest, right? This year they've given us 1 extra game on Thanksgiving, which, as I said at the intro when we came in here, in theory was supposed to make it easier because you get the extra pick on Thanksgiving. And I don't think this was on purpose. It just is what it is. It actually makes it harder, because you already had games on Thanksgiving. Now you have no games on Sunday. The games on Sunday are so bad. So this year, this Sunday, I haven't looked ahead at Christmas closely. I will bet you this Sunday/Monday is the hardest day to pick. Unless Tennessee just crushes Carolina and everybody's on Tennessee. Otherwise, Sunday could be your bloodbath day. People could start going down into the weeds and taking teams like Atlanta or Indy or something. Who knows?
Man. I don't even know what to be sitting there making it through Thanksgiving and then to have your life on the line here with the Titans. Oh my God. That is.
Well, here's an interesting question. Over under, how many different teams do you think are taken on Sunday? And to give you a little bit of help here,
Yeah.
last week you had
I'm
1,
thinking-
2, 3,
I'm
4, 5, 6,
thinking-
7, 8, 9, 10.
I'm actually
13, 14
thinking
teams.
about 7, a minimum of 7. Am I in the ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough line. I take the under, but I think it's a tough line because I think you're going to get a lot of people bombarding on Tennessee, and you might have the onesie twosies, and it's hard for me to always account for any of those. Like, you know, when one guy takes Atlanta, you're technically right.
Yeah.
You know, I probably should have said teams with more than 3 picks and then maybe 5. But it's going to be an interesting spot. Who's going to really want to take New England? Who's going to want to take any of these teams? If you're not taking Kansas City, there's nobody I want to take on Sunday.
In fairness, I would want to, because I'd want to be back into the pool, but I get the point. Yes.
Hey, we can still, speaking of which,
yes.
If I really, really wanted to get back in the pool, Mike, how would I do it?
Oh my gosh. So I'm hearing over at Survivor Sweat, the marketplace is heating up. They got 14 unique single entries, ranging between 11K and 84K, some with percentages to be purchased. And if you get really thirsty here, there is a 6-pack entry for 300K. Yeah, you would have to be really thirsty.
Thirsty is one way to put it.
Oh my gosh.
Do they have any of the Thanksgiving entries left on that one?
Oh yes.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. But yeah, they've had more people call in interested, trying to figure this thing out, because I mean, I don't need to remind you, this is a winner take all pool. And so I think some of these runners are sweating a little bit heading into this weekend, wondering if they're even going to survive, of course. And so trying to get some equity out of their ticket. So yeah, they've had more people post than ever before. So it's kind of getting exciting over there. Looking at some of the entries, yeah, some of them had very little, some limited availability, but there were some that I could create a path to get through.
100%. I remember popping a bunch open and just looking, or any that have Miami still available. And there might have been one. I was looking for that specifically, and I can't recall if I found one or not.
Yeah. I mean, and to that end, there's no guarantee that this thing isn't going to be a 25-person chop, you know. Correct. I mean, that's one. And then, you know, if it got down to 4, 5, 6, whatever, I mean, even then, I mean, are you going to be able to reach people? Are you going to be able to, you know, negotiate? Are you going to be able to try to, you know, and there's no guarantee. So you got to play this thing to win it. Or if I guess some of these guys are trying to cash out some of their equity as we speak, because hey,
look, maybe if you think, and I think this would be insane, but hey, you never know. Maybe if you really, really, truly believe in your heart of hearts that the Lions are going to lose this week, and that if you had your entry, you're so sure of it, like, you know, they're missing 3 or 4 players and nobody else knows. You pick whatever random scenario you want, right? I guess you could go buy one of these entries and take Green Bay. So you wouldn't need Detroit to be available, and then just sell it on Monday.
Oh, shit.
Well, you got to get through Sunday too. But if you're right, remember, your buy this is winner take all. The market is heating up. There's no guarantee you can sell it, but it's possible you may be able to buy an entry, get through a week or 2 and sell it.
Yeah. You
may not have to make it to the end. And I've already seen people are selling, which is interesting. I see people selling 25% of ownership, which means the buyer does not get to make the picks, right? The seller is going to keep making the picks. He owns a majority of the team. But you just have a sweat, you know, along with that buyer. So you have to make a decision. I think most of the people that are buying these things want to go ahead and play, but that's not always the case. I'm sure there are people out there that want the sweat, but don't really believe that they're good enough to actually continue to pick the teams. The person selling 25% presumably believes they're good enough to keep picking the teams, but, you know, maybe they need to hedge off a little of their entry. They paid $1,000. Someone's selling 25% for $11,000. At least he makes 10 grand, and you know, he still has a shot to make 75% of $9 million.
Yeah. And your $1,000 investment is now
made 10x.
25. Yeah, the implied value is
the implied value, yes. But if he sells 25% of it, he's locked up 10x, and he still has implied value of the balance. So it's interesting. And look, I'm not gonna lie, I think some of the pricing here is high. But you know, that's what makes a market. You got to wait and see what people are willing to do. Yeah. And like I said, I think you'll start having some crosses, and it could very well happen right after Thanksgiving.
It could. It absolutely could. Yeah, the implied value is $24,911. So $25K. And again, you can also make an offer. So
correct.
If you're serious about it, make an offer, see what you can negotiate. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Who knows? And go from there. So yeah, that's a wrap on the look ahead to week 12. Again, get your picks in tonight. Even if you're playing the Miami Dolphins on the Friday game, it has to be in tonight by 10. Make sure you submit that button. I want to see another week of no picks, because I don't want that to happen to anybody.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Mike, just and people that only care about Survivor and don't care about football otherwise, just go ahead and hang up now, turn off, kill the pod. So we were out last week watching games. Somebody looked at you and said, do you think Mike Vrabel will get fired? Right. And remember, you're the Titans fan. And you said, oh, there's absolutely no way. The guy's a great coach. He has no talent, etc. I mean, you defended Vrabel for sure. Not putting words in your mouth, 100%. I agreed with you. I heard from our friends over at VSiN a day or two ago. They were talking. Somebody asked the same question. They said they're hearing out there in the wild that, maybe Vrabel's job is at stake. And I can't remember who the two commentators were. The other person basically said what you just said. They basically laughed. And I think their example was, here's how you know a coach isn't going to get fired. If they get fired, how quick would it be before somebody hired them? Right. And I'm telling you, man, the Raiders would pay big money to hire Vrabel if he suddenly got fired. I would be knocking on management's door, telling the Raiders, bring this guy in. He's a dream coach for you.
He continuously makes chicken salad out of chicken shit. I mean, the guy is just an absolute. They all love playing for him. He's just, I think he's one of the better coaches. He's got to be top 5 in the league, in my opinion. I'm not just being biased because I'm a Titans fan.
If anything, you're reverse biased when you're the Titans fan.
I'm reverse biased. I'm more of a fantasy football fan now, or a Survivor fan. They've broken my heart for years. I don't even want to get into that. But if they fired Vrabel, I'm done. There's no chance. The small percentage that I still root for them, which I will always root for Survivor and fantasy over them. So maybe I'm not that much of a fan as it is, but I would just be done, completely done. And bring him here. If Antonio Pierce doesn't work out, I would love him.
And Pierce is doing a great job. I'm not trying to get rid of Pierce. To be clear, but the test is nominal. But if you have the opportunity to get Vrabel, you'd have to take him. It's just one of those things. And actually, in fairness, the follow-up comment on VSiN was, no, his job should not be in jeopardy. However, I guess if for some bizarre reason they wanted to be done with him, they trade him as opposed to cutting him. I don't know how that works with the coaches. I know we've seen a couple of coach trades in the last 20 years, but I'm sure it depends what the contracts look like, etc. But it's all irrelevant. It's not happening. So.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for week 12. Get your picks in. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. A lot to be
thankful. Gobble. Eat up. Watch games while you're eating. Have lots of wine, because if you lose, you're going to want to, or tequila or something. If you win, you'll be celebrating. If you lose, you'll be mourning. So have a few drinks while you're eating and watching.
Yeah. So hit us up on Survivor Sweat X handle or on any platform you can find us. Reach out, get on survivorsweat.com, and good luck, and hope you survive week 12. See ya.
Looking for Survivor strategy articles? Did you lose your last entry on a Survivor contest and wish you could rebuy? Check out our marketplace and you may find what you need. Head over to survivorsweat.com for all things Survivor. And we'll see you next week for the next Survivor Sweat podcast.